Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, good morning. It is the 6th of January, and we are going to be working on comics. But continuing my little walk through all my instruments, I'm trying to kind of walk through all the guitars I own. And the guitar I'm showing today is kind of strange because you'll notice it only has 4 strings. That's right, it's a bass guitar. I'm going to talk about this. And then we'll get into working on Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is the historical fiction graphic novel that I'm working on for Turner Publishing with writer Lavender Vroman. And we're going to just try to get through coloring maybe like 2 panels before we break for lunch. We'll see if we get 2 or 3 panels colored. By the end of the day, we're going to have this page fully colored. I have no doubt in my mind. Okay, so in the little guitar journey I've been doing, the first guitar I showed you guys was the Squire 2 that I picked up at like a pawn shop. It was the first kind of decent guitar I had. It was a Stratocaster. I've modded it out so that it was functional again, and given it like foil pickups and a lot of fun stuff like that. And it's a passable guitar now. The next one I showed was the Jasmine, which was like the cheap acoustic guitar. It was my first real acoustic guitar that I still own. And so we got into that. So then the third guitar I showed was the, let's see, where were we? Oh, yeah. The third guitar I showed was the Telecaster that I picked up, the Squire Telecaster. From like the 90s, and that was a guitar that I had to kind of replace the saddles with stainless steel saddles and do locking tuners. But other than that, like it's still in pretty good working shape. The fourth guitar I showed was my Seagull S6, which is a wonderful acoustic guitar. I've absolutely had to make no modifications on it. It was the first guitar I bought that was like a decent guitar, like a good guitar, not a budget guitar. It was like a mid-range guitar, and it was great. And then the fifth guitar that I showed was my Squire 20th anniversary Telecaster that I modded out like crazy. I gave hot rail pickups and a P90 in the neck pickup and a hot rail for the bridge, and got it to be this kind of crunchy, awesome machine that I still love today. And so moving on from the Squires, that might actually be the last Squire in the lineup of my guitars. We're going to get into the bass. So the first time I bought a bass was in high school. I had a Squire P bass, and then eventually ended up kind of selling it because I wasn't playing bass as much, and I didn't really have access to recording back then. This is like back in the day where you had to like fork out for like a 4-track, and I'd always go to a friend's house to record who'd had a 4-track, but I never had one of my own. And so I didn't really have a reason to have a bass once I had stopped playing bass in bands. And so that P bass disappeared. But But I went on to like front a band, and I was the lead singer in a band for a couple years called Long Walk Home years ago. And we almost got signed. It was actually a pretty intense band to be in, because we like got to record at like 4th Street Recording in Santa Monica for free, because the producer Jim Work, his mentor, like basically believed in us and thought we should. He'd record us, and then we could just kick him back after we got signed. And so that was kind of a cool experience. But the bassist in that band had a Stingray, a Music Man Stingray, and I remember playing it and being like, man, yeah, I mean, those guitars are like $2,000 or $3,000. But I was like, man, if I could ever own a Stingray, that would be the bass I'd want to own, because just the action on your fingers. Anybody who's played a Music Man, even their guitars, at some point, maybe in my life, maybe I'll have a guitar like a Cutlass or something. They're just excellent players, and they have like these amazing necks. That's one of the big things about a Stingray, is the neck work on Music Man is just unmatchable. Um, or It's hard to say, but it's like they make just incredible playing machines. The other thing about a Stingray is it's an active bass. So unlike a P bass, a Stingray has a little area in the back for like a 9-volt battery, and you have an extra knob where you can punch in some extra like fuzz, some extra overdrive to your bass. So a lot of really great basses throughout the years, including Flea, I think, uses a Stingray. And the second I played one, I was like, oh, that's why a lot of bassists I really dig like play Stingrays, because they're easy on your fingers, and they're great basses, and they also have that extra like oomph of the overdrive if you need it, where you can kind of make the pickup active, so that it's kind of making some effects, some overdrive. So flash forward, I had gotten that Seagull guitar and I wanted to record. And this is a few years after we had moved back to California. I kind of got this idea that I wanted to try to track and record an album on my own. And I realized I can't really do that without a bass guitar. So I started looking around for budget bass guitars that don't suck. And initially I was like, I'm just going to get another Squire, like P bass or something like that. And then I found out about this company, Sterling, which I'm not sure how long this has been around, but this didn't used to exist. And that's like the Squire for Music Man. It's like they're more accessible range of price, and they make a Sterling by Music Man Stingray. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could own a Stingray. And I looked up reviews, and they were really well reviewed. So I ordered one, and particularly for the desire to record. And so anything you've heard by No Saboteurs, we had a bassist, so it's not on No Saboteurs' first album or second album, yeah, for sure. Um, Corey said Flea came out with his own lines of basses a few years ago. They're hideous. I don't know. I mean, they look awful. I agree, but I bet they play well. But anyhow, so I ordered this Music Man. I really liked this blue because it was like a kind of minty greenish blue. Just definitely like a very like retro color. And it's great because it just has like one humbucker, right, which is great, and a tone, volume, and then that overdrive knob. And then on the back, you can see the little input for your 9-volt battery right here for your active pickups. And other than that, it's just a real basic guitar. But what impressed me about this was I ordered it, and also it has a really good set of open tuners on the back. And what impressed me about this was, first off, like there's like this weird kind of I can't explain it, but it's almost like flame pattern on the back, even though it's not a flame neck. It has like really cool figuring on the wood. So especially when you order a budget guitar, I feel like I just lucked out and got a real cool bass neck on a budget guitar that has like some really beautiful figuring on the wood. But not only that, it is just plays beautifully. Like it doesn't hurt your fingers in the slightest if you're used to playing guitar. And for a bass guitar to just not hurt in the slightest, compared to the P bass I used to own, where every note you played you'd pay for in blood on your fingers, sometimes literally. It was just like such a cool experience. And I would recommend if anybody out there was like wanting a decent budget bass, just for tracking or recording, like the cost to quality that you get on a Sterling, it's insane. It's almost a Music Man. And yet, these are going to be in like the at the most like $500 or $600 versus 5,000. And I think this was like 400 and something. It wasn't a crazy expensive base. It might have been five. I can't remember. But when I got this in the mail, I just fell in love with it, and so I use this for tracking on everything. So everything on the bottle of Better Than uses this base. Everything that I put bass on our second album, Good Bees Don't Die, for No Saboteurs, was all of the bass lines for my songs that I played bass on were on this. And then my friend has a Gretsch bass that's actually really good. It's about the same price point, and it's a good bass too. I'm not sure. I don't think it's an active bass though. All right, so I'm gonna play this per the thing. So this is my sixth guitar that I own, and it gets a lot of use. And I couldn't ask for a better bass, especially for the price point. Like I said, when Music Man really came on the scene, there was a long period of time where that was like the desired bass for like especially hardcore bands, and it was just inaccessible to most people, and you'd have to work, because I mean, $3,000 or $4,000 to drop on an instrument is a lot of money for a gigging musician, and so they just really weren't accessible. And then when people finally got them, it was like this undiscovered, impossible thing. So the fact that Sterling exists is really exciting to me, and it makes me curious about their guitars too, because that same band, the guitarist used to play a Music Man too, and I'd play around on it. It was just like unbelievable. The neck on it, again, like um, just a good neck. It like you barely feel it on your fingers. The action's like perfect. The fretwork's amazing, where you don't like get your fingers like caught on the frets as you're going. They're polished really well, so it's like you can do bends, and you're not like hearing this like scrape of the unpolished frets, which again, unpolished frets and fretwork that's bad. Like, a lot of people will like go through and kind of like work through it and like, sand off or file like the edges just to kind of improve the fretwork. But what's nice about even guitars that are budget guitars with like fretwork, especially where it's not polished or something like that, usually if you play it for like a year and you play it decent, like you're going to have great frets after that, because you're going to wear out you're going to wear out all those imperfections anyway, with playing, which is why like when you see a guitar that's played a lot, quite often on the back of the neck you're going to actually see um like markings from just the amount of stuff through it. Paul said, I wish I was the lead singer of a band. I would also like to be the heartthrob of a boy group. I think I would enjoy that. Being a lead singer was fun. It was a weird band, because that band was before I really went to art school, and that was the closest I ever got to getting like signed. And we would, it was an interesting band because the whiskey in Hollywood, which was always traditionally like a pay to play kind of gig, would literally call our band on nights where a band dropped out and be like, dude, you guys want to play the whiskey? And we'd just go and play the whiskey. And then the weird thing was, that was the first band where on our like second show, I'd be singing lyrics, and I'd look, and like the first two rows of the crowd that like came all were singing my lyrics. And we had no demo. you know, it was kind of crazy. It was a cool experience. And probably the closest I ever got to like, we had like a paid rehearsal space in like Hollywood. We were like really kind of doing checking all the boxes the right way. And of course, like all bands, it kind of fell apart, and helped me to realize, like, because at that time, I've talked about this, but at that time in my life, I was just going to do music. I was literally working at AM/PM. We bought like a van to tour with and stuff. And like, um, it was like we were, that was a path that was potentially going to happen. And I'm kind of glad it didn't work out, because I have friends who got signed and did the full tour thing, and then ended up in scenarios where like they ended up like a decade later having to like start their careers, because they had spent like a good chunk of that career building time just traveling the country, and again like having amazing memories and stuff. And again, I was never really a great musician, but in a weird way, I'm kind of thankful it never really worked out, because by the time that a lot of those people I knew who got signed and stuff were like back home, they had to like reset and restart, whereas I already had like a nice head start, because I had that kickstart of like, okay, music's not going to happen, let's do art school. And I actually stopped playing guitar for a long time too, because I did for a long time feel like it was a split interest, where it was like if I focused too much on, because I loved it so much, I was like, I have to pick between two things I love. I love art and I love music. And if I put 100% into art, then music's not going to happen. If I put 10% into music, it'll just become 100%. And then, so it was like that weird crossroads where I had to make a decision. And I'm kind of glad I made the one I did, because that enabled me to like go on and get the Xeric grant and be able to make comics, which I always wanted to do. So anyhow, and it helped me focus while I was in school and stuff like that. And I still always had a guitar with me, but I just didn't take it very seriously. I just like noodle sometimes. Paul said, closet skill for me is I used to be able to dance. Well, also, Paul, you are probably one of the most hardcore karaoke-ers, if that's a word, that I have ever seen. Like Paul rocks the karaoke, so I think you could front a band. So we're gonna run through just a few little. I'm just gonna mess around on the bass. I have nothing rehearsed or anything like that, but I want to give you guys the tones of this. And I like this little biographical walkthrough of the different instruments. So I borrowed my sister-in-law's bass amp, because I don't actually own a bass amp. Everything I record is direct through, which is pretty normal for bass. Generally with bass, you're just going to record direct in. Nice. Corey said, many of my product development guys and luthier friends say the Kala U-bass ukulele is the most bassiest bass out there. Dude, uke basses are insane. Like it's kind of amazing with these little plastic strings, or nylon strings, that what kind of bass tones you can get. Okay, so here we go. Let me know if you guys can hear this in chats. I'm going to play it a little loud, but not loud enough to hopefully annoy everybody in the house. So this is just clean with the tone all the way up and with no overdrive. And again, it's set on the one pickup it has, and you don't need much more than that. So. So anyhow, I'm not a bassist. So like, again, I annoy my bass friends, because look at that heresy right there. I play bass with a pick because I'm a guitarist who occasionally plays bass because I need tracks. And then you can do like. Oh yeah, that's it. It's anyhow, it's great. The nice thing about this too is just great harmonics, easy to play neck, and again, just a great little working machine that can take a beating. Like I've done rehearsals with this when No Saboteurs was first together. We had bassists that didn't have a bass, and so they'd borrow this. And I think this thing actually ended up getting hit by a spinning ceiling fan, and it's just like it just kept going. It's been like because basses are tall, and I think we were getting into music, and it kind of tilted a little too high, and it hit the ceiling fan, and you heard this whap, and bass is still rocking, barely a dent on it, and it still plays beautifully. It's just these are great little machines, and Sterling is at least from this one, it's an incredible company. The other thing about it, I think it's called a C-shaped neck, I think. But the thing that's great about Music Man's or Sterling is like a P bass. When you start getting into these upper areas of the neck, it usually gets real thick, and so it's hard to play. It gets kind of hard to play these upper access areas like down here, and also the just this whole area of the guitar is a little uncomfortable on a lot of basses, but and then if you start playing like an Ibanez or something that has more of a flat neck, it just doesn't have the vibe or the feel of like a P bass. And so you don't get like the richness of the tone. But the nice thing about Sterling and Music Man as well is as it goes up, the neck actually kind of slims in this spot. Like, so the neck actually gets a little, it starts like here, and then the radius kind of goes down as you start getting to these upper frets. And so playing high on the neck or playing low on the neck, you feel like you have full access. The other nice thing about it is, unlike a P bass, it cuts back a little more here, so you have full access to the frets. Like, it's not hard to get up here, and it's not hard to get up here on the bass. Just the full neck is like very easy to play. The other nice thing about these is your truss rod. Your truss rod on some basses is actually under the pickguard on some of the older P basses, and then I think on the newer ones, I think it's just your standard truss right here. But the nice thing about this is it's got like a full axis truss rod where you can just put in your Allen wrench or whatever, or your Allen key, and you can just do neck adjustments on the fly with the metal adjustment right here. And that was an upgrade that Squire did. The only not Squire, the Stingray did. The other thing that a lot of people don't know, people who are like me and are big fans of Fender and Leo Fender and his designs, a lot of people might be like, Music Man, that I prefer Fender. Well, Leo Fender designed this bass. So Leo Fender, I believe, left Fender to retire, and then he still had the bug to make instruments. And so there's two companies that Leo Fender kind of worked for. One of them is G&L, where he kind of took more improved versions of the Telecaster and the Stratocaster, which were his designs, and he kind of improved on them. The other was Music Man, where he made the Stingray, which was like his answer to a better jazz bass and a better P bass. He was just like, okay, if we took like everything about bass and then kind of modernized it, made it more playable, played with active pickups, which didn't exist when Fender designed the P bass. So the Stingray is actually a Leo Fender design. So if you're like a Fender snob out there, that's another reason a lot of guitarists who are very loyal to Leo Fender's stuff will rock like a G&L or a Stingray because they're all the same mastermind, same designer. And it makes you wonder how somebody like Leo Fender was able to make so many iconic instruments. I mean, like the Telecaster again is my favorite guitar of all time. That was Leo Fender. The Stratocaster is iconic, whether you like it or not. It's just like it's an irreplaceable instrument, and that was Leo Fender. A lot of the early Music Man guitars were Leo Fender. Pretty much the P bass, the jazz bass, all Leo Fender, and then the Stingray Leo Fender. So it's like these are instruments that like every band plays. Every bassist, like most bassists I know, love Stingrays. And yeah, that's all Leo Fender. So let's do one more thing, which is the Stingray specific active bass. So I'm gonna play it regular, like just like a basic line. Okay, so then if I turn on that active bass, hold on to your trousers. Hopefully you hear that like I don't know how much is translating on the mic, but this is the active now. And then if I turn it off, so it's just a little extra attack if you're a bassist in a band, especially if you're playing hardcore, which is why so many people like it, especially if you do stuff like slap or slap and whatever, you know. But if you do that with like it's just an extra buzz. So yeah, so I'm going to stop annoying the people in my household and turn off my bass, but that is guitar number 6 is my Stingray. Not a Music Man. Man, I would love to play a Music Man because I know that this is a great guitar. It's a great bass guitar. It feels very close to the Stingrays that I have played, but it's, you know, a quarter of the cost. But I do know the actual Music Man versions of this, if you're a bassist, that's like one of the best bass guitars you could own. But I'm telling you, for value, I feel like these Stingray basses are incredible, and I really would be really curious to check out the Music Man guitars. And at some point, I might actually have to check out the Sterling, you know, Cutlass, I think, which is the Music Man guitar I'd be most interested in kind of playing, because it's kind of like a Strat, but just, you know, Music Man'd out. And those are little shredder guitars. Like they're usually short scale, and the necks are so easy to play. You can just like move all over the place. The only thing is I'm not really a shredder guitarist, but the other nice thing about Sterling or Music Man guitars is quite often they'll have those in like 7-string versions. And so I might look into a 7-string Music Man at some point in the world in time, if I ever feel like I want to get real chuggy and start doing some drop D or drop whatever songs. So yeah, so that is my bass guitar. I love it. It's simple. It's easy. You can get these used for dirt cheap. I'm really happy again with, you know, for a couple $100 or for $400 or $500, getting that kind of figuring on the wood is just weird. Their wood choices are great. It's a really solid guitar. The other thing I was going to say before I end it, because I do want to explain why people like Stingrays, the body is so aerodynamic on these guitars, on the Music Man design, that it just makes a P bass or a jazz bass just seem like almost impossible in comparison to play, because it just fits nicely. It has the body contours, and again, it's got that fret access, and you don't have that kind of access on a P bass or a jazz bass. And I know there's people who are like jazz bass and P bass loyalists. Those are classic guitars. A lot of my favorite bassists played P basses, but most of my favorite bassists who played P basses also have a Stingray in their arsenal, because the Stingray is just the basest bass. And so it's cool that Sterling, that company, exists. Again, I'll be really curious to check out their guitars. And with that, that's the end of guitar time. And now we're going to play a trailer. I'm going to get this thing put away and everything set up for art stuff. And we're going to rock and roll. Let me know what you guys think, either in the comments or in in chat, what you guys think about this little journey of explaining my guitars. So far, hopefully it doesn't seem excessive. Right now we're at 6, and every single guitar I've shown you has like a specific application or use or tone that I need or I like using, adds something to the arsenal, or has like a real like a personal reason for me to hang on to it. Like my first Stratocaster, which is arguably a really terrible guitar, but I love it. I bled on that thing. I played so many gigs with that thing. I stickered it up like every kid should with their first guitar. And that thing was like, it was like my right hand for a couple of years. Like that's what I learned almost everything on. That's what I wrote almost all my first songs on. That's what I gigged my first big gigs with. It's the thing I figured out. Like I knew that guitar like the back of my hand. I knew the one tap that I could do on the bridge to kind of get a specific kind of feedback when we were doing live shows and stuff. And so that's one I'll never get rid of. But this one, for being a much more recent instrument, like I only got this maybe about 10 years ago. Maybe it was only 9 years ago. And this has just been like, if this had existed when I had bought my first bass back in high school, I might have become a bassist, because it's just so playable. It's so easy on the fingers. It's got that Stingray attack, but like it doesn't cost you an arm, and like you don't have to sell your kidney to get one. And so yeah, I love this thing. This is never going from my arsenal. It's my favorite bass. I don't think I need another bass because I'm not really a bassist. If I ever did get another bass, I might mess with like a 5-string. But for now, if I need just like a solid 4-string bass, can't go wrong with the Stingray. Okay, now we're going to play. Paul said, crowd singing your lyrics must have been mind-bending. So cool. Yeah, it was really surreal. That whole band, we had like a really killer following. We could headline shows. Again, we had like producers in Hollywood like meeting with us and stuff. It was really weird. It was a weird experience. But again, I'm kind of glad it didn't work out, because I think if it had worked out, I think my art would have been set back by about 10 years. Okay. Although honestly, playing shows is fun, and I do envy people who are able to do the tour experience. All right. We're going to do the trailer for, I know this has been getting a lot of play lately, but I love Frank's Adventures at the Library. So we're going to play that, and then we'll come back and we'll color some comics. So thanks for bearing with me while we talk instruments. It's fun. All right, here we go.
Our heroic adventurers fought orcs, monsters, sorcerers, necromancers. Now they find themselves in front of a mystical library. What shall they find? It's all in the roll of the dice.
We've come this far. There's great power behind this door. I can feel it. We just have to get past it. This door is no match for my axe. I shall chop it down. You always want to use brute strength. Why don't you try knocking? We'll try it your way. You may enter. The library is open to all those who seek knowledge. Feel free to look through our tomes. Maybe you'll find the answers you seek. I sense great power here, and it's behind those shelves. Indeed, there are powerful items hidden behind these shelves, but you can only get there through the enchanted words. Do you have those words? I believe I do.
Tremble!
for the Kemble.
There is great power. Look at that glove. Must be so powerful. That is not where I sense this power. I must get closer. I found them. I found these sacred manuscripts written by Joshua Kemble. Behold, I now possess 2 stories and Jacob's apartment. Please tell us more about 2 stories and Jacob's apartment, and who is Joshua Kemble?
Xeric Award-winning cartoonist Joshua Kemble is a freelance artist, graphic designer, and author. 2 Stories is a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. Jacob's Apartment is a coming-of-age graphic novel in the vein of Ghost Road and Fun Home. It weaves together the threads of spiritual faith, identity, purpose, love, and loss to create an engrossing world in which waking and sleeping dreams collide.
You have made your choice. The passage is now closed. Wait, can I get that glove? No. Oh. All right, let's go.
All right. Corey was saying the U bass has strings that feel like a fishing lure, kind of gummy. Yeah, I've played acoustic basses that have similar things, and I've messed around with uke basses or whatever, and it's like it is really interesting because I don't know what material that is. It's not quite like a nylon string feels kind of tight, like it's like imitation catgut, so it's a tighter string. It doesn't feel rubbery, but it feels more just plastic. Whereas like those basses that have like, I don't know if they're nylon, I don't know what that material is, but it almost feels like just like rubber strings. Like there's just these thick, rubber things, like gooey, but they sound really cool. And they almost sound like a fretless bass, which would actually be probably on a list. If I ever got another bass, it would either be possibly fretless, although I'm not that good of a musician. Like, I don't know if I have my fretboard memorized to where I could just go without those markers. That's the sign of a really solid musician who's really memorized their scales, where like they can get to that location without feeling the fret. Whereas for me, hitting that like 12, like knowing where my 12th fret is, I need that marker. Like, I don't know if my memory is that good, but fretless basses sound real cool and jazzy. They almost sound like a stand-up bass. And what's interesting about those little uke basses is they can get the same tone as like a stand-up bass. Like they have a real deep like resonance, and a lot of it's those weird rubber strings. So yeah, pretty interesting. Gary was saying afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Gary. So what we're going to do now that we've done our bass wind down and I showed you guys guitar number 6, right now what we're going to do is go ahead and finish up this this coloring. For at minimum, I want to get like it would be nice to get this panel, the panel that I'm working on page 95 done. The first panel and maybe the second, and then maybe break for lunch. How are you guys doing? How are your projects going? I'd love to hear it. It's always fun. I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me. It feels like having somebody there with me in the studio. I've said that a lot, but I really appreciate that because it's nice to be able to kind of, even if it's digitally, to like hang out with people while doing this weird solitary thing that we do. It's just nice. So yeah. So that's my corny. I like you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, and then on a guitar note, I'll be running through a lot of guitars. I think the next up on the list will be my American Telecaster. It's my favorite of all my guitars. And that was like a a dream guitar, like an actual Fender. As a guy who like grew up playing Squires and stuff like that, getting a real high end, Fender was, and not just a Fender, but an American made Fender was like a dream can come true. So I can't wait to go through that, because I think at this point I've shown you guys like budget and mid range instruments that I acquired throughout the years. And so a lot of these were acquired at like reasonable standpoints. And this was all before I lost my mind and got guitar acquisition syndrome. And now I'm like at the point where daily I always look at guitars. I always keep an eye out, especially on the used market, for like a crazy deal or a guitar that I might not have in my arsenal. And I will occasionally look at guitars and think, when I'm in a financial spot where I could, what would be the next thing? Because I do love them. I love them. I love what comes out of them. So, but that'll be fun to kind of show on the next. The next one will be probably showing you guys my baby, like the guitar that kind of like after getting that was kind of like, I don't know, any guitar after that's like, oh, this gets an interesting tone, that kind of thing. But it's the perfect guitar for me. It's my rockin' machine. Okay. Other than that, we're going to get into I'm just talking about instruments a lot, but we're going to get into just filling this in, getting this kid colored, and then we got to do this whole crazy background, and then we got to do it all over again. Do you guys ever like catch yourselves working on comics and realizing like the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, right? I don't know. I've heard somewhere that that's actually not the real definition of insanity. But I'll still take it. It's like repeating the same thing multiple times, even though you get like a bad result. I feel like art is that every time. It never quite comes out exactly as you intend, and yet we keep repeating it. So we must all be absolutely crazy. That's my thought on the matter. We're all a little crazy, is all I'm saying. So, yeah, but like I think the thing I like about there's a whole thing about it's weird. Through instruments I can kind of I used to be really confused by people who would get like super into like cars. And I mean, I kind of get it, because when I was a kid, I, like a lot of kids, had Hot Wheels and stuff, and I thought cars were really cool. But I never like was the kid who like memorized like everything there was to know about a car. And I can appreciate a car, like looking at especially like an old timey car. And I think if I knew more about like engines and stuff like that, like I might own, like a classic car, because they're really cool. And there is something really nice about the idea of taking something, especially like something old and forgotten about, and restoring it and making it something beautiful and new, or like restoring it to its old glory. I can understand the appeal to that. And I think that's part of the appeal that I see in instruments, is probably the appeal that car people feel about cars, where it's like when you get like an instrument, even this little Stingray, there's an appreciation of like the design, the woodworking, the incredible innovation in the factories and stuff that was able to make such a high quality instrument at like a very low cost. And there's so many things on an instrument, even a basic bolt-on, that can go wrong. They're relatively simple construction, but still there's so many things that can go slightly wrong that just make it an unusable machine. And the fact that like people are able to do this on a budget with with solid good woods and stuff like that, it just really makes you appreciate the woodworking and the skill behind the guitar and the electronics and all of that. Because of guitars, I have a better window into like why car people are like really into cars. Like I can definitely see I have a better window into like empathizing with people who are really into cars, because it's like I kind of get it. As a musician, there's something really nice that you appreciate about like a really good instrument. Um, and I think especially when you play music, it's like, I guess it's like if you were a car driver or something, you really do appreciate the little extra things like the like on the Sterling. To me, the playability of the neck, the woodworking on the neck, the intonation on the guitar, just straight out of the box, like the setup of it. It's unbelievable at the cost that they're charging for those things, that they're able to do that um so well, you know. And then you really admire like the people who innovated and kind of designed those things in the first place. Ronnie's here. How's it going, Ronnie? How you doing, man? Hope you guys are enjoying your New Year's. If you're on Christmas break, I hope you're enjoying your break. I've been really enjoying having some time off with the family. Even though for me, time off is still working. It's still been nice. It's been nice to be able to kind of like really just focus on personal projects. And I got a few freelance projects that I got to get moving on after this page is completed. One of which is drawing some robots. Ronnie said, I'm good, just doing some work. Nice. So I will say, I'm going to be able to be doing these streams kind of a little bit earlier for the next week or so. And then I'm going to be on a schedule where most of my streams will probably be after like 5:00. But for now, I'm really enjoying this. I have to pull open now for the rest of this. I have to go find the open market. I have another scene that was made in this open market. So I need to take a look at that. I need to go back through. So I'm going to do what I do with colors that I haven't finished yet and just make them magenta. And then we're going to find that open market sequence, which I think happens in like the 20s or the 30s. I'm going to try 22 and see where that gets. Okay, it's not 22, so it's got to be like in the 30s, I think. Because 22 is more like the they're traveling. Maybe it's the late 20s. Trying to find the page sequence that shows the open market in Italy. And I know the scene. It's like Wilson. Aha. It's 27, I think. Page 27. Yeah, Paul said artists never get a day off. It's our plight. Well, that's the thing, too. It's like, if I wasn't getting paid, I would do art. I'm just going to be doing art. Whether, you know, it has financial return or not, it's just like part of who I am. Okay, so here's our open air market. We can pull some of the colors from here. And again, it's definitely going to be in a slightly different spot of the open air market, but if I can kind of use some of the same colors, hopefully it'll feel like a similar scene. So we're going to do our ground color real quick. And then we'll move our way from there. So I'm going to deselect this ground color. and we'll see how we can go from there. I kind of think, though, as corny as it is, we are really lucky to be able to work on drawing stuff. Even if you can only make like a small amount of time per day to kind of work on art, I feel like that speaks pretty well, right? There's that hierarchy of needs that we have to meet as humans, right? And in order to do art, you have to have like a lot of the other boxes ticked off. You know, like you have to be able to eat, right? You need electricity. Well, you don't need electricity, but it's sure nice to have electricity. You definitely need like shelter. You know, some of those are just like primal needs, right? And I feel like art is not a primal need for people. It might be a primal need to make, but I don't think it's like a primal need for survival. I think it might be a primal need for survival, in for like a long life. I think art is helpful for that, but it's not like up there with like food. So in order to make art, you have to have like some of those early boxes ticked, you know. Because again, if I couldn't eat, then I'm going to be, you know, working on that function first, like whatever it is that's going to get me to eat, you know. And so I feel like we're kind of lucky to be able to do art, is all I'm saying. Especially if you can finagle it to where it can help provide those primary needs, right? The dogs are getting pampered by my wife and sister-in-law. Okay, so we have a barrel here. A barrel of laughs. Okay, we're getting there, guys. Paul said, I feel blessed to have a passion. Would be weird to be a normal person. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if a passionless life would be really all that interesting. I mean, it might be kind of, I don't know. I don't know which is better. Because there have been times in my life where sometimes I've been like, I don't know, it'd be pretty interesting to be a person who could just like go see movies and stuff, and that's it. Like just work, go see movies. You know? That might be a nice life if you could just do that and that's good for you, you know? I don't know if that's in me, but I do kind of wonder who is the most content in those scenarios, you know? Edit Phil. I feel like there should be a version of Phil in oh, come on. Why isn't this filling? There should be a version, like a plugin or something, that's called Punxsutawney Phil. And maybe that version of Phil could be just repeating the same Phil you did because it's Groundhog Day. I know. I'm stretching for that joke, but what can I say? It's still the morning. All right. Let's see. How about our fish? Our fish in this barrel. How can we make those kind of work? I want them to be a little bit bluish, but maybe gray if if my computer doesn't crash. I am getting the spinning pinwheel of death, so hopefully there's not too many delays. Let me know if the stream is kind of glitching out. Okay. I think we'll do that with just a slight differentiation of the grays, just to kind of give it some sense of depth, but not too much. And I think we can get there, guys. Paul was saying you don't want to be content. Screw that. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, obviously, I don't know if contentment is the goal. I'm kind of one of those weird people where I don't know if like the whole point of life is to be happy. I feel like that's not. I mean, being happy is nice, but I think there's something more to what we're doing here. I think it's kind of shown through like the weird, just like, why do humans do weird things like go to the moon or whatever? Like, why do that? We just do. We strive for something better, or something different, or something we haven't done yet. Make that the same here. Let's see what we got here. Okay. How about an Uncle Phil? And he said it could be used only when you're ready to give up. I like that. You could have a Dr. Phil that gives you a therapeutic color palette. I don't know. Speaking of Dr. Phil, if you guys have not seen the last episode of Artcasters that's on Corey Kerr's channel, where we did our plans for the new year, Jim Lujan, I had no idea he had it in him, did one of the best Dr. Phil impressions I've heard. I didn't know that was in there. I didn't know that Jim had a Dr. Phil in his back pocket, but yeah, Jim can do a pretty killer Dr. Phil. Okay. We'll just do a lighter thing just to give it a little bit of depth. And then I got to decide. I think those were going to be like cabbages. And you guys, we're almost at the hour mark. And the hour mark, for those of you who are new to the channel, is the time in which you must slap that like button. You must hit that like button. Smash it. But not too hard. Don't destroy your keyboards. Just gently tap the like button if you have not yet. We're going to play a trailer, and then we're going to go for probably another hour, maybe longer. Definitely have got to finish the colors on this panel, and that's going to take a while. I need power to continue. You can help me continue by hitting that like button.
You might want to mute. The groceries are here.
The groceries are here, so I'm going to mute. And actually, that's a perfect time to play the trailer. So we're going to play... Let's play the Jacob's Apartment trailer. I'll be right back.
at the scenery.
All right. Ronnie said Picasso famously said, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up." Nice. Paul said, "I love that one, Ronnie. So true." And then Ronnie said, "I think we are all blessed to say that." Paul also said, "I touched the like button and I liked it. It was begging me to." That's right, guys. Fondle that like button. We're gonna make this as creepy as possible. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, we are going to continue our little thing here by pulling just some of the colors from the previous sequence, just so we're kind of getting that same vibe. So hopefully, subliminally, it'll help just seat the people into that. And this is definitely daytime. There's bells going off. There's dogs barking. There's wildness ensuing because I believe there are strings coming. I ordered a new couple packs of acoustic strings because I figure when that Red Label Yamaha shows up, I'm probably going to need to restring it, and it might need a little bit of work. Hopefully it's just a perfect guitar, but I have a feeling because it's a Goodwill guitar, it might need a little bit of work. That's my guess. It'd be amazing if it comes here and it plays like a dream. Who knows? Out of all my guitars, that will be the oldest that I own. Okay. But I am eager to play around with that one. I might have to skip the sequence a little bit on my revealing guitars thing because I might just noodle on it and do a live stream while I annoy people by just playing that guitar for like an hour. Okay. So we've got some bread. I think this next one's going to be apples. This is an open market, you guys. Trying to pull some of the colors again, just to like keep things in that vibe. I think on these ones back here, I might... No, you know what? I'm still going to have like some real subtle changes of tone, of value in the color. One of my rules with this is that I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do like shading unless it's a sky or water or a liquid. Although I do think on the open air thing, I was allowing myself to do a little bit of white lighting in the area, which we might do. We'll see. Just to kind of keep that vibe. I want a little bit of saturation on the lighter part just to like make it not just look washed out. And we're going to just continue to work our way through here. And now that I'm seeing the timing on this, I thought I'd get through 2 panels during this stream. And I'm actually guessing that I will probably just finish this 1 panel before we leave for lunch. So that's okay. And then a lot of the next sections, the next 3 panels, are going to be a lot of just selecting the color that's already here and then filling it, you know. Or do you know? Who knows? Okay. Some apple going on here. I don't mind these. Usually with red, I'm going to be really trying to get like a very pure tone with it. But since this is a very muted, warm background, I'm going to go ahead and not do my like pure red thing. Because if you want like a real apple red, a lot of the time you want to make sure there is no color other than black in your mix if you're making it darker. Otherwise, it starts looking like tomato or ketchup color. But I kind of don't mind the tomato ketchup thing just to kind of mute down the background here. Just giving the impression of this being a full market. Okay, let's try continuing to pull some of the colors here. We're getting a little further back. There and back again. So I want to talk Lord of the Rings movies. What are your guys' opinions of the Lord of the Rings movies? I recently watched Return of the King, the extended edition, in the theater. I was really in awe of how much I love that movie. I was like, I had almost forgotten how much I love those movies, that whole series. And I'm one of the weird ones that I like The Hobbit too. I haven't rewatched The Hobbit in a while though, but I actually liked his extremely extended version of The Hobbit. I feel like Peter Jack. Like the thing is, I also really liked the whole Let It Be documentary by Peter Jackson. I watched like every episode. I was like, this is amazing. I think I might be a fan of Peter Jackson. Because like I like his extended cuts. I feel like somehow he is able to retain my attention the entire time and get me pumped. And whenever one of those, especially the Lord of the Rings movies, whenever they're over, I feel a little sad. Like, oh, there's no more. It's just such a compelling world that I think he built, you know? That's weird. What happened there? How did that get there? What even occurred there? Do you guys see that? We're going to have to fix that. How did that little like gray business happen? I think somewhere in the selection of the fish, I had like not deselected correctly. Okay. I also just realized that like if somebody were just coming into this and they weren't watching and they overheard what I was saying, they would think this is a lunatic where they're like, what's happening with the deselection of the fish? People are like, this guy's just talking gibberish. Deselection of the Fish is a great band. That's a Jim Lujan joke. That actually sounds like a metal band, right?
Too long. Deselection.
Deselect the fish. Would deselection be like the opposite of natural selection? There's another, that would be a great band name. It could be called Unnatural Selection.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, we're going to fix that little gray blob business. What is going on there? Sloppy McSloppy Pants is my new name. And for some reason, that crap got sloppy. Let's see if this fixes it. See if we can get those little areas worked out to where they're not crappy. Okay, I think I just need to do, let's just do Dr. Phil here. Gary said, Paul said, Lord of the Rings. I don't get it. You want me to leave now? And then, Paul was saying, okay, so we got a couple. Gary was saying, recently rewatched all 3 extended editions, and while they certainly aren't perfect, overall they're really excellent. Yeah, they're amazing. Paul said, ever wonder about the effort you put in, like looking for the correct color that just doesn't matter to the reader? I do that sometimes when I'm working. I have to remind myself not to take shortcuts. Yeah, it is funny, especially with comics and animation. I think those are like the 2 real areas of that where you're going to put in quite a lot of work for like 3 people who care. Like, you know, I think artists notice. Yeah. Like Maya was saying, a lot of artists read that stuff and they notice. Yeah. And that's the reason you do it, right? You do it for those people who are going to notice. So it's like a little bit of a, like, that's what I love about Chris Ware, right? Chris Ware puts in so many little things, like redrawing a panel that he could have just cut and pasted. And the only reason to do that is really just for like the 3 people who are going to be like, oh my gosh, he redrew the whole thing. Because really, like most people would just be like, you know, like if he cut and pasted, they'd just be like, meh, it's the same thing. So you're doing it for like the 3, you know, or the 2 or 3 people, you know, who are actually going to care. But I love the idea of thinking of that person who'd be like, wow, they actually put thought into this, you know. I also think, like, here's the thing. I have to believe that subconsciously, I think people notice. I think that, like, people who don't notice, I think it still impacts them. It's kind of like it's almost like a great soundtrack where, you know, in a movie with a really great soundtrack, you can almost like lose the soundtrack. Like there's some soundtracks like Star Wars and stuff that are iconic and they're like the center of the film. But there's so many other soundtracks that are incredible, you know, that you're barely going to notice, you know? And it's like, and the brilliance of those soundtracks is you're not it's kind of playing second. It's adding atmosphere. It's adding those little things that like no one cares about, but they're going to notice. Like they do care about it. They just don't know any better, you know? That's my justification of it. But at the end of the day, it probably is a lot of work that doesn't need to be done, that like nobody cares. Although that can also be a really freeing thought too. Weirdly enough, like I think a lot of people would get really frustrated. Like I remember talking to a cartoonist who had published their first work and they were going through that thing I think a lot of us have on your first big work, you know, like whether it's like your first completed animation or your first comic or your first graphic novel, and you put in years of work into this thing and you announce on social media, like, hey, this thing's out, like I finished it. And to you, it feels like you have run the gauntlet and achieved this great thing, and you've been living with this thing forever. So you're just like, everyone's going to freak out about this. It's going to, this is going to be up for Eisner's, like this thing is the best thing. And people in my life are really going to care about this thing. And then this cartoonist was going through that first area of realizing, like, oh my gosh, I've been promoting this for 5 weeks and I sold 2 copies, and I know more than 2 people, like, what's going on? Like, I can't even get the people that know me to get it. And I remember having a conversation with that person of, about kind of like the weird, like, it is disappointing when that happens, and that happens to the best of us, and it's hard not to feel a little bit of heartbreak with those moments, which is why right now, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, that would be a hard feeling, that's why you should order Jacob's Apartment in 2 stories. Help me get over that feeling, guys. But anyhow, they were going through their first time of this, and I was telling them, you have to remember that while this is the center of the world for you, they all have stuff going on. Like, everybody's doing something in their own little world that is the center of their universe, and they feel like, wow, this is really significant. But at the end of the day, and I told this person this, and I've had to tell myself this, it's like, hey, we're not that special. Point being, like, yeah, it might feel like the center of the universe for us. And in order for us to make good art, I think you kind of have to get in a space where you feel like it's really important. Like, otherwise, why would you do it? But yeah, at the end of the day, like, when you announce your new book, like, meanwhile, Bob over here made a really good breakfast and wanted to post about that on social media. And they're thinking about their breakfast and like maybe budgeting to get that, like, cool, like, artisanal bacon or whatever to throw on the next meal. They're not thinking about your book. And a lot of people might, even who would be thinking about your book, and this is what I told that guy, because this is a hard learned lesson that I've definitely learned throughout the years. Maybe they are wanting to get your book, and it's just going to take them like 3 years to get it, because I've done, like, even as a guy who, like, loves art and supports artists and stuff like that, I've definitely had a bunch of books that I've been like, I'm going to get that book. A good example, Monica, Daniel Klaus. Daniel Klaus, easily one of the most important cartoonists of our time, probably single-handedly, well, not single-handedly, but he was probably one of the most influential artists on me getting really into indie stuff. Like, I still remember the first time I read 8-Ball, the first time I read, the full Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron, which is my favorite by him. Ghost World, all of those classics. Art School Confidential, when I was in art school, that got passed around like a Bible. That little thing from 8-Ball that was skewering, art schools and stuff. I love Daniel Klaus. Like, his style is influential on me. Like, a lot of my early inking was looking at Daniel Klaus stuff. I love his work. I own almost all of his work. And yet Monica, I haven't even touched. I just keep going, yeah, I need to get that. And then I just put it off. So if I'm doing that with Daniel Klaus, who already has me, like, I'm a fan, I'm like a huge fan, and I still haven't bought that, then, like, what makes me think that people should drop everything and get my thing, right? Because it's like, well, I mean, I'm not even buying Daniel Klaus's thing, and it's Daniel freaking Klaus, He is an Eisner guy. So anyhow, my point is, it's funny because it's like a bittersweet thing, but it can be really liberating to realize, like, nobody cares. Like, and that's why when you're doing those little extra touches, if you realize nobody cares, then the one person you need to be doing those things for is you. As weird as that is, the reason to do it is because the next time, like when you publish that book, you're gonna know, oh yeah, I had this extra part. You know, like a good example of that is like Gary in Dinosaurs versus Marsbots has a secret language that no one can decode. And I think that actually Christopher Runciman decoded it. But it's like, if that thing exploded, there's still going to be the vast majority of people who aren't going to care about that. Kind of like Lord of the Rings, which is brilliant. How many people can actually translate the languages of Tolkien? You know, there's a small subsect of people, but at the end of the day, you know, Tolkien did that because he wanted to, and that's it. It's like, does it further the world that the elven language is actually a real language? Does it further the world that these things actually could work? And if you wanted to take the time to kind of learn all those things, you know, does it matter that Klingon can actually be spoken? You know, like you got to think about these things for, like, from a storytelling perspective. A lot of it kind of doesn't, but it's great because you do it for the people who would care. And at the end of the day, what I've come to conclude is, you know, regardless, what I want to make is a good book. And then if no one supports me on it, at least I know it was good. I personally know it was good. And that's what I'm aspiring for. But it took me a while to get there because, yeah, that first time you publish a book, especially a graphic novel, you know, and you sell like 2 copies and you've been hustling hard, it's rough, man. You know, the first time you convention and you have people just walk by you because you're just another booth, you know, it's brutal, man. Gary was saying, I do believe though that if you aren't paying attention to detail, the audience would notice. It's like money or health. You notice the absence. You don't think about it when it's there. Exactly. And I think even if that's not true, I think it's almost essential that we have to believe it. We have to believe that what we're doing matters, even if it doesn't, you know? Gary says, Christopher decoded the cipher, but not the alien language, which I never intend to translate for the readers. But I love that it can be translated just in case somebody's crazy enough to do it. And I also love the fact that, again, that detail's for you. You know, that detail's for you, and it enriches the reader because you are indulging in art. And that is the whole art process. Like, why make just marks? Like, there's abstract artists who will just fill a canvas full of just a bunch of patterns. Why? And that's just because you're exploring pattern making, and hopefully it has an aesthetic reason, but the end all reason really is you need to chase what you're doing as an artist and your meaning. And your goal is to shout it as loud as you can from the rooftops and hope people hear you. You know, you're making your, you know, sonata or whatever, like, you know, and that little flick of a hammer on or whatever, like, there's 3 people who are going to notice who play an instrument and go, wow, that's an crazy technique. And then the vast majority of people are just going to be like, that was a cool, weird little thing. I like that, but I don't know what that is. Nor would they really notice if it wasn't there. I feel like that's so important with art. Paul was saying, you've sold more copies of my books than I have. Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that, like, if that's true, I'm really happy about it because I feel like the Detective Perez books are incredible books. Like, I picked the first one up on a whim because I was like, I like Paul, he's a nice guy, he's in our community. And then I was just blown away by it and instantly bought the next one because I was just like, it's like really solid work, man. I really like that series. And you know, so that happens too. That's the fun thing about our circle of friends is I think a lot of the guys that we hang out with, like, you know, I think Gary mentioned this too, where you're saying, hey, Jim's like my favorite indie animator. And mine too, it's like, if I didn't know Jim, actually, to be fair, I didn't know Jim when I first was exposed to his cartoons. I think I was at a Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted festival when my wife and I were first dating. So before we were married, my wife and I went to see Spike and Mike's Twisted um, animation or whatever festival in Long Beach. And for about 2 weeks after that, we both would like do the "Mama, I'm a thug, like, just because it was there was something, and this was like an incredible festival. Like, I'm forgetting the indie animator who was in it. He's like the guy who does the "my anus is bleeding" bit. I can't remember. I think is it Bluth? Is that guy? That's not Bluth. Anyhow? A lot of famous animators who've been up for like Oscars and stuff like that were in this festival. Because I remember that guy's one was hilarious. It was like a balloon that like beats these kids to death. It would like raise them and drop them. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But among like all of these excellent animators, Jim's little "Mama, I'm a Thug" cartoon just stood out to us and it was addictive. It was hilarious. And it was really accurate. Like, I think because at the time we were living in Long Beach near Orange County, it just felt like every Orange County kid was that "Mama, I'm a Thug" kid who's like, yeah, boy. Oh, I think I cut out for a second there. But my point is, it's cool to know Jim. It's cool to like know Paul. It's cool to know Gary and these people who are really good, And Gary was saying, I think we have to be honest and admit the art is for us, for ourselves. If it's not, it's truly for the audience. And are you really an artist? And that's the thing. I used to be a guy of like thinking like saying that is pretentious and, you really are doing stuff for an audience. And like at the end of the day, I actually am like, no, we're doing it for us. Like that's art is for us, it's for, you're doing it because you want to make it. And those extra flourishes, they have to kind of come from just you, I think, where you're like, and, maybe we're also doing it for hope. Because I think hope has a lot to do with art making, where you hope that someday someone reading this thing is going to notice that little extra thing, you hope that the reader will like notice the little extra thing and that it's worth it, but yeah, it is weird when you're spending hours, flat coloring an entire background, like Paul was mentioning, and you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe nobody even cares. like, are people going to care that like, I didn't just do this as a flat, like I could just do like a flat single color that contrasts and just be like, yeah, there you go, done. Are they going to notice that I've gone through and made sure all of these colors are harmonic with each other? And so I don't know. But I think it is like strangely like liberating to be like, you know what? Even if nobody notices, I notice. And that's the most important thing. Because if I don't care about this when I make it, I know there's not a big return. And so, and if there is a big return, cool. But I know the odds are against this being a wild success. So at the end of the day, the only way I win out of this, the only thing that's going to keep me going and making these things is if I'm happy with it. Paul was saying, have you guys heard of Joe Cartoon, who made Frog in a Blender, the animation? I don't know if I have seen Frog in a Blender, but that sounds really disturbing. Is it literally just about a frog being put in a blender? That's a great name. So I don't remember Frog in a Blender. But the other thing I like is surrounding yourself with people who are hyped on what you do, like sincerely. And, I think that's cool too, because it's like I do know whatever my project is, I know the art casters are gonna care. You know what I mean? Like I know like Corey's gonna check it out and be like noticing some of those things. You know, I know Scott, I know Gary, I know Paul, I know all you guys are gonna check it out. So it's like that to me is a real reason too, because even if it's just for you guys, it's like I don't know, I kind of like that. That's a pretty good crowd. That's a crowd I care about impressing. um which is why I'm going to leave secret messages for everybody in the art casters in my comic. Okay, guys, I have to finish this panel at minimum before I take a lunch break, but I am starting to feel a little bleh, so I'm going to take a break real quick. Corey said, same site that did the torturing the smiley face, right? Gary said, I think at the core, when you're authentic is right, the hope is authentic connection with your audience. So if you're tailoring for an audience, creating with an audience in mind, the authenticity suffers. You're code switching. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I've come around to that after a long period of time. Okay, guys, we're gonna play "Kids Say Kemble," and then by Jim Lujan, who you should all be subscribed to on YouTube, and then we're gonna finish up this panel. One panel to rule them all. It's gonna get there.
We know the Georgia kids say the craziest thing.
So, little Susie, do you have any brothers or sisters? I understand you're in 3rd grade. How do you like that? Do you like your teacher? You like to do a lot of fun things at school? You got any hobbies, Susie? Any things you like to do when you're not in school? I hear you like to read.
Well, right now I'm reading 2 stories written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. It grapples with faith and mental illness. It's ultimately a story about redemption. It's a savage piece of writing. Also, I just finished up Jacob's Apartment, another one by Kemble. Jacob's Apartment weaves together elements of spiritualism and relationship dynamics, as well as atheism, and all the while it deals with abandonment and loyalty. It's a fierce, fierce read.
Do you like ponies?
All right, so some more info on the Frog in the Blender thing. Paul said he lives in my town somewhere in Michigan. Small world. I've never met him though. And then Paul said, "Yep, it's just a frog in a blender." Then he pushes frap. I think Gary really nailed what I was trying to get at in an articulate way, which Gary always does. But he said, I think at the core, when your intention is right, the hope is authentic connection with an audience. If you're tailoring for an audience, creating with the audience in mind, the authenticity suffers. And honestly, that's one of the reasons, like, even on a music level, I really like collaborating with my friend Josh, who I've been friends with for a long time. We will just painstakingly like add stuff and re-edit and re-add things to songs for the sheer reason of like, wouldn't that be cool if it also did this? Wouldn't it be cool if we did why don't we retrack this, because I don't like the way it sounds. And we keep each other kind of pushing each other to make something we're happy with. I feel like that is, at the end of the day, I think that's the only thing you can do with art. I think you can try to cater to an audience, and weirdly enough, I think you can even have success catering to an audience. But I feel like internally as an artist, the most fulfilling stuff you'll ever make are the things where you're making it, obviously with you in mind, and I know there's a lot of people who are like, you are not your market. And that is important to remember, because there are times where your own subjectivity can get away from a good objective analysis. Like, it's why it's good to have other people read your scripts and stuff, like, because there are things you're going to miss if you're blinded and you're in a silo, But at the end of the day, even making that step of like getting other people's opinions on your work as you're crafting it, at the end of the day is kind of serving the purpose of pleasing yourself. Because it's like at the end of the day, I don't like work that's made in a in a in a silo. Like I tend to like work that has gone through, like, other than On the Road. On the Road is like the weird outlier where, thank God, that wasn't made anywhere but the silo that it was made in, because like it was just a perfect book. And I think that book with like editing, On the Road just by Kerouac, wouldn't be On the Road if it had like gone through multiple edits. It's kind of brilliant in the way that it was just written on a single sheet, you know. But I think other than On the Road, I think most books that I admire or enjoy were put through a process of editing and scrutiny by the writers. Um, you know, and a lot of artists too that I really admire were put through the scrutiny and edits of critique. So if I'm trying to make art that I'd admire, or art that other people would look at and be into, of course I'm going to put it through a similar scrutiny as the art that has connected with me, because that's what I want to see in art, right? So at the end of the day, I think you just got to make what you want to see, you know. With this book, I'm trying to make it what I would want to see in a historical fiction graphic novel in the Victorian era. You know, I'm trying to make the style feel like that, the panel borders feel like that, the execution, the way it's made, kind of just give a good feeling. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do think you have to be pleasing yourself, as weird as that is. Yeah, Gary was saying it's hard to imagine On the Road being written for anyone. It's like a diary. Yeah, and that's what's so raw and great about it. And it's funny because I've read a million books that try to do the Kerouac thing, you know, and they just don't do it. It's like there's just something about, like, that was one of those. I do kind of think there are some times where there literally is just a muse. And I'll be honest, I don't think Kerouac is a really great poet. Like, I'm not a big fan of like Kerouac's poetry, but, and you know, his other works like Big Sur and stuff like that, like they're good, but they're not hitting that like magic of On the Road. But there is something about On the Road that's like, in my opinion, is like almost like magic. Like it's not even skill. It's just like the dude was possessed like by like a muse to write one of the greatest works of American literature. And it's like it's kind of a weird one because it just defies all the rules, in like the best of ways, where it's like it's not like workshopped, it's not like overworked, it's not even like proper English half the time, but it's like a great work. It's I kind of hate that book and love it. That's the Garage album. That's the Stooges. You know, that book is like, yeah, it's like a Stooges album where it's like, yeah, the guitarist doesn't really know what they're doing. That, like, you know, the drummer, like none of the people are really technically proficient, but they have this like rawness and beauty to what they're doing, and it's just organic, and you almost can't fake it. And I feel like even Iggy Pop has spent like a good, like almost like a lifetime trying to recapture that, like the raw power of the Stooges first few albums. You know, it's like you just can't, like, I don't know, there was just something magic going on there. Paul said the milk in my fridge expired on December 26th. Expired milk is pretty bad. Like, an expired food is bad, but expired milk just is in this like magical world of ickiness. Yeah. Good luck with that, Paul. I just hope you didn't open it in the house, because like there's nothing worse than when you don't notice that the milk is expired and you open the carton and that just magic. This is a different kind of magic. This is like a demonic magic. That smell just wafts through the house. As a kid, I was really forgetful, and my mom would like pack lunches, and she would put, I don't know why, she would put like milk in a thermos for me. And then I would forget to eat lunch, and I would go back to school the next day and the next day. And eventually I had like this bag that just smelled of like, it just reeked of like old milk. And then I'd be embarrassed to like tell my mom or like, anyone in my house about it, because I'd be like, I let the milk expire. So I think there was like a good year in elementary school where I just dealt with like this disgusting smell in my backpack of like expired milk, because I was just like too weird of a kid. And actually a lot of that was art, because I'd be like working on art projects during lunch and I'd like just not think about, this disgusting expired milk in my bag. I had forgotten about that. It's one of the fun things about these streams is like somebody will make a random mention of expired milk and it brings up a interesting memory. What was the other thing? The other day Gaz was on and we were talking about like G.I. Joe, and I had remembered this. I still need to look that up. I think I'll do that during lunch today. Is I'm going to look up what that it wasn't Transformers, it was G.I. Joe. There was like this coloring book that was like the most epic thing I had as a kid. And I had not thought about that in years, until Gaz and I were just riffing on G.I. Joe stuff. And then I was like, why haven't I looked that up? Because like, if there's anything the internet is good for, it's like looking up nostalgic things. You usually can hunt things down, So I bet that coloring book, I bet somebody has scanned that coloring book. It might even still be in production, like I might be able to order a copy of it. Paul said, I can't smell. I had my daughter whiff it and she gagged. That's brutal. That's like being the king who's like, taste this first and see if it murders you. Ah, yes, the food has gone bad. Okay, this is going to be more of that background. I'm kind of liking these muted tones in the back here. Definitely got some hams and turkeys. Turkey legs and hams. Okay, we're almost there, guys. Almost there. It's slowly but surely. And I feel like Frank Salazar is clearly not here, because Frank Salazar would not have let me say slowly but surely without saying, don't call me Shirley. That's like a setup that Salazar would have been all over in the chats. So, Frank, if you're watching this after the fact, know that you are missed. We are getting there, guys. We are getting there. And the weird thing about this flat coloring thing, too, is like we just start all over again on the next panel that's in the exact same scene. I think I mentioned this the other day, though. Like, I do feel like for colorists, I think that weirdly enough, like inking a crowd scene is kind of a pain. Drawing a crowd scene is a real pain. Coloring a crowd scene or like a crowded street is like, I mean, now you're just having to do a bunch of little selections, And I'm not even like unique to that. The person who told me about that was my friend Rick, who we've had on the Artcasters a couple times. He used to work at Bongo, and he's the guy who taught me how to flat color. And I remember one time him going through like a panel of Simpsons comic at the time that he had to do, and it looked real simple, but it was like at a mini mart, and every single little package in the mini mart had to be like flat colored, and it was like he was going through like just selecting the flats and being like, I hate this. Weird, because like on a drawing level it probably wouldn't have taken as long as coloring it. On an inking level it would take like half the time, but once you get into like having to make every single little color selection, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a whole beast. You know, so we're gonna do our muted background people here.
It was kind of getting dangerous for the leopards here, for the humans.
Yeah, Gaz was saying G.I. Joe coloring books. Yeah, I need to look those up and see if I can find that specific one that I loved so much as a kid. Speaking of nostalgia, let's do a little shout out to Scott Circling. Scott has been doing deconstructions and reworking of nostalgia recently on his YouTube channel. The latest thing is wax packs from like bad movies, and wax packs that could have existed but never existed. The dogs are freaking out about something. Not sure what. Probably somebody walking by. Maybe a guitar delivery? If it's a guitar delivery, I might have to sign for it, so let me know. Gaz was saying it sounds like a toy dog about to do a backflip. It's close. They have a job, they protect the house, these dogs. They're vicious monsters. Vicious killer dogs. One is a teacup chihuahua and the other is a poodle mix mutt. My wife always kind of remembers what kind of dog Bernie is. I never do, because he's kind of a mutt. He's like Shih Tzu poodle, so you got to watch out for these dogs. They're killer dogs. They're little murderers. They'll rush you, and you'll have no idea what happened. Okay. Guys, we're about almost at the 2 hours in mark. So, we are definitely going to finish this panel before we finish this stream. That must happen. Ooh, brownie mix. That's good. Okay, so brownie mix just arrived at our door. I'm excited about that because I want to make brownies. So we've been making some treats. My sister-in-law's been making some rad stuff. She made some cupcakes the other day, and I was like, you know what? We need to rock some brownies. We have to. It has to happen. The brownies shall commence. Okay, I'm just going to do a real quick. We're going to get the sky real quick. Real quick here. Going to get that sky. Oh, some other really interesting news. Gibran of the Artcasters is he just posted on Instagram that his Kickstarter prints came in. So Horrible Tales, if you guys backed it, hopefully you did, is in print now, and we should be receiving our copies soon. I'm really excited about that. Okay, guys, all we have left here is the buildings in the background. And then I think we're going to do a color hold on the sky. But we're going to finish the buildings in a second. And from there, then I can actually break and eat lunch. So let's play the trailer for... let's do let's do Wordzoid by Jim Lujan. Okay.
Well, Peter, since I'm such a big music fan, I'm going to have to go with Karen Carpenter. Oh, Stu, I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. Trish, what you got for us?
I'm gonna go with Kim Gordon.
All right, let's check that answer. Kim Gordon. Do we have a Kim Gordon? Yes, and that means you're our new Wordzoid champion, Trish. Dale, tell Trish what she's won. Trish, you've won a copy of 2 stories, a memoir of faith and mental illness. Handwritten, hand-drawn, and handed to you by artist and writer Joshua Kemble. But wait, that's not all. You've also won a copy of Jacob's Apartment, the story of a doomed romance. What happens when you take Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and put it in a blender with Ghost World? You get Jacob's Apartment, written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. Trish, thank you for playing Wordzoid.
All right, great job, Trish. I was told I was gonna get a lifetime supply of paper towels.
All right, that was Wordzoid by Jim Lujan. You should be subscribed to Jim's channel. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and finish up the buildings and then call it for this stream. And I will be streaming later after lunch. I think we're going to pull colors just so it kind of feels like the same environment a little bit. The open market. Because we've already established it. So again, it's that just kind of keeping it consistent. So whether consciously or subconsciously, it's going to feel like the same location because it's going to have that same kind of color vibe as the earlier part of the book. Let's do just a couple of those muted tones too. And again, this is probably a different location on that street, but it's just going to have a couple of those similar vibes. Ronnie said, later, everyone, enjoy your lunch. I'm guessing that is where you are heading. And I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for stopping by, Ronnie. It's always cool. If you guys haven't, check out Comics de la Muerte on YouTube. It is the best horror comic related YouTube channel. I've been on it. Gary's been on it. A lot of our crew has been on it. And it's a good show. Very thoughtful analysis with Ronnie and Jason Alexander. And yeah, it's a good show. So go subscribe to Crimson Owl Comics on YouTube. Okay, we have a few things left to go on this. I think that'll do it for that. Trying to see if I have any wood posts. Maybe we can... yeah, here's a wood post. I think that'll be the... deselecting this little wood post. And like the nice thing about this is I don't think this part here is going to take that long, but we'll see. You can quote me on that like 3 hours from now when I'm still working on it. Okay, I want to have this color for the windows. For one of the windows or a few of the windows. And I think to make things interesting, maybe we'll do the windows here too. Now I kind of want to look at this frog in a blender thing. I feel like maybe if I look at it, it'll be like, oh, okay, I remember this. Okay. I will say I was a big fan for like old school internet. I don't think anything is going to top Strong Bad. I feel like that was the internet for a long time. And I need to look and see if this still exists, but there was a point in time where it's one of those things I wish I had bought at the time where they had a shirt that looked like you know those shirts that used to have the tiger on them? Like those polo shirts? Oh, the alligator, sorry. Not a tiger. They had like a little alligator on them. Well, they had a version of that online, and I remember thinking, I'm going to buy that. It had Trogdor as the alligator. It was the coolest thing. And then I don't think I picked it up, and I don't know if that exists anymore. But I still think about it. Like I never wear polo shirts, and I would have worn that polo shirt because of the subtle Trogdor. It was just brilliant. Gaz said Izod and then said later. Or see ya. All right, Gaz, have a good one. Have a good lunch. We're getting there, guys. I'm going to finish this out. It's got to happen. It has to happen. Okay, let's see if I did any color selections for a veranda. There is one that was white up here, and I kind of like that. So maybe we do a white. Maybe that's a white part of a building here. think I want to do this whole section. And then I think we'll do, let's do kind of overlooking like this. And pull from this color a little bit. And maybe like these sections can be the darker, and then we can do just a slight variation. Where it's a little lighter. And we got that. Let's see some other colors from here. Maybe we can do a brickish looking structure for some of this going on here. So maybe that'll be between these two little sections as that kind of brick tone. And then maybe coming down into here, and I think what we'll do is, oh, never mind. Okay, I think we'll do this as the brick section. And then similarly over here as the brick section back here. And then we'll do kind of a darker version to just give a little depth in this spot. And then we'll do our continuation of that building, which I didn't notice at first, but I see it now. I kind of like this being here. And I kind of want to make those structures kind of more like a, almost like concrete. So we'll do these little things as like a, almost like concrete accent. And we'll see how far that takes us. A little bit lighter. And let's try like a doorway that fills a little bit, but goes maybe darker and a little more brown. And maybe we have one that goes a little lighter for here. And maybe we'll have a snippet of that, the kind of darker concrete here. And let's look for kind of one of these buildings back here. Maybe we can do that cream with the kind of purpley going on. So I think maybe here we do, oh, I just realized too, I kind of did that wrong, that last bit. There we go. Okay. think actually what I want to do is, I think I want to do this darker brown and then this thing, and let's see if that works. So for these areas that are kind of in the windows, I think we'll do just a darker window. Almost there, guys. And then we'll kind of see if this works. It might blend too much at this color, but we'll find out. If so, maybe we can vary it a little bit. But actually, I kind of like that. So I want to do this as the darker part here. And then I kind of want to do a lighter part here. And then I think we'll make the little kind of overhang over the windows a different color too. Okay, I like that. Let's get rid of those. And then I think just for this far background part, maybe that's where we go to that this with the purple kind of thing going. So add it. Fill. Sometimes I'd make shortcuts for the fill. But sometimes I find it quicker. For some reason with fill, I find it quicker sometimes to just go to edit fill. I think Shift F5 does the shortcut on that though. And we're just going to do a darker shade of blue here. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys, by the way. If you haven't yet, hit that like button. Do me a solid and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. If you have subscribed, consider telling a friend about this channel. Especially if you know artists that want to do some hangouts, have some company while they work. It's a good show for that, I think. Okay. Couple things I want to do here. I want to really pull from some of the other colors. So I think right now what I'm going to do is I want to pull from this color for the window, and we'll kind of work from there. So, windows are already done for that. So instead, what we'll do is pull from this color for the stacking and then this color for the interior details. Okay, let's see what we can do here. So I like that. So we're going to do edit, fill. Okay. And then let's do our stuff. Deselect some of these details on the windows. Deselect for this. Deselect for this. Then let's get our other color. Edit, fill. I like that quite a bit. And that's going to be this whole side of the building. The great thing about flat coloring is as you continue, like it feels kind of daunting at first whenever I take on like flat coloring a page. But then when you start getting to this part where you have like a bunch of it done and it's just kind of finishing it up, you start realizing like, oh, I've made some progress. So this will be this side of the building. And then I think we're going to use a similar thing here with the, I like this red. Oh, didn't want to select it. Wanted to eyedrop it. So quick question for those of you who use Photoshop. I'm not sure how many people are in chat right now, but have you guys noticed that like the shortcut for the eyedrop tool is like really weird and finicky? Like if I hit I, it like bounces from like the brush to the selection, or sometimes I've just noticed the tool short brushes, or the not short brushes, the tool shortcuts seem to be like glitching out on Photoshop, and I don't know what that is. Oh, Izod was the shirt brand. Nice. That's what Gaz was saying in regards to that. I almost wonder if it was made by Zod, you know. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, I kind of like this for the what's going on up here. We are almost there, guys. We have like a few little buildings left. And then I'm going to do the color hold, and then we're going to call it for the stream. So, let me see. I want to have, I think I want to do like a deeper color here. Oh, before I do that deeper color, let's take care of the rest of this this part. Oh my gosh. And I think what we'll do is we'll do like this, and then the sides. Then we'll do a little bit deeper, like this. Then we'll do this color. And then we'll do this color. Oh, that's bad. This kind of sky to just kind of correct that a little bit. Cow. Now I want to do that deeper brown for this little kind of wood paneled spot. And now I think I want to start getting into these kind of purples. So we're going to do edit fill. This will be our windows on this one. Once that decides to go, if it's not freezing, we're going to save. Command S, man, when you guys are working, is huge. So I have two things to look at during lunch. One is, do they still have that Trogdor shirt? I'm sincerely doubting that that exists anymore, but if it does, I should look at that. And then also, I need to find that classic G.I. Joe coloring book. Because if I can find it, then I could show it to you guys, which would be kind of fun. Okay. One step closer. Whew. My computer is getting tired, so it'll be good to finish this up. So we have like 2 buildings left, guys. 2 stinking buildings, and that's it. Just 2. Just 2 to go. I'm kind of digging that, actually. I think I just want to do one more thing, which is let's get this spot. I actually very much like that. So we're going to go ahead and make the rest that I haven't finished color filling. We're going to make that magenta. And then what we're going to do is look at the layer again with the shading. And we're going to cut this spot where it's overlapping out. So we're going to select the sky. And then we're going to cut the spot from the shading. And then we're going to edit, paste in place. Lock it. And then we're going to, oh, did I not? Okay, we have to undo. Let's undo it. Okay, let's go back here. Let's cut. Okay, now we're going to do locking it again, edit, paste in place. We're going to lock it. I'm going to eyedrop that sky color. This will just be called sky. And now we're going to do our color fill, edit, fill. And then I'm going to make it just a mild bit darker and more saturated. So we'll do darker, pump up the saturation on that sky. Maybe I make it a little more in the blue area. Do we want it more in the purple? No, I like it kind of more in that blue tone. And that's where we'll call it, and I'm going to hit save. And then we will continue the rest of this later on. So if you guys have watched this, thank you. Make sure you hit like. I will see you guys later today when we finish more of this page. But for now, we have finished one panel. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see how that looks, that one panel. And then I will see you guys on the next show. I appreciate you guys. Thanks to everybody who stopped in. If you guys haven't yet, check out everybody who's in the comments. Their art: Paul Pate, Gary Hodges, Gaz, Gretzky, Corey Kerr, right? Like, I mean, Ronnie Gunter. All of these people are really good artists. So go check them out, subscribe to them, and I'll see you on the next live stream. Goodbye.